Okay, we're back on the other side here, and we were just finishing up with Edward's trip back to the year 32 to talk to Emmanuel, and they were discussing when we left there the difference in evolutions in the two people. Emmanuel was very aware of Edward and knew that his evolution was very, very high. Actually, his age of evolution apparently was higher than Emmanuel's. That Edward was not actually an earth being, that his spirit had come from another planet and benefited from more lifetimes, greater knowledge, more experience. It's not mentioned in there where the origin of Emmanuel is. There are constant references throughout the contact notes of the connection between Emmanuel and Edward. Billy, later in life, on conversations I've had with him, there's some confusion on Billy's part too. There were constant references that he may have been Emmanuel, that he was somehow connected with Emmanuel. It's quite obvious that he actually is the prophet who is bringing back the teachings of Emmanuel that Emmanuel prophesied about. This is already happening here in the year 32, and Billy is the prophet that is spoken about. So, but they both ascertain that they understand each other's numbering system and that they are both living far in advance of the evolution of their current times, making it very difficult to talk to the people of their time. That goes without saying. They also had one other little chat about Edward asking one more time about this idea of being a Savior and the Son of God. And Emmanuel says, yes, I sense your meaning there. And I wanted to make it very clear, he says, that never have I said in my lifetime that I am the Savior for anyone. It is not that I teach. I'm not teaching people that I'm here to save them. I'm teaching people to try to be responsible for themselves by living with the laws of creation, by observing nature and understanding it. I'm trying to teach them to stand up and develop their own spirit, to learn happiness through the force of their own spirit, to become peaceful with one another by development of spirit, so hate and anger and these things just disappear. But they don't quite get it. He says, never have I either said I was the son of a god. I've tried to explain to them that I was educated by the sons of God, that I spent 40 days in the home, in the palace of God, understanding that I've been able to be taught by the celestial sons from the Pleiades. He knew this. And he says, I've explained to people over and over again that even though I talk about the words and the laws of God and of creation, that I know full well that my father was the angel Gabriel. He was a physical being. And that my mother Mary was my real mother, and my Joseph is my stepfather. He says, I've told people this, but they don't pay attention. They continually want to, raise me up higher than I actually am. The things that he performs, the healing and so forth, which we're going to talk more about in a minute, have so astonished people. It is so advanced for their time, and our time also, that people can just not help themselves that to believe that he is some sort of God. But he wanted to reiterate that never had he mentioned this, that he is fully aware that that there are many gods, and that the great God of the three races of the human earth, who started the three races on earth, is a human being, but one that is just greatly more educated, a king of wisdom. And as we learned earlier, the Pleiadians call these people Ishwishes, when they are on the very edge of all knowledge of the physical and spiritual life. So he kind of cleared that up, and in the Talmud Emmanuel, which we're going to move into next, that's described even more in detail, because these writings that Emmanuel is talking about, that will be dug up in 1963, which I'm going to begin to explain in a moment, are put into a book form and called the Talmud Emmanuel. Well, the contact is about ready to end. They've talked for quite a while, and Emmanuel is wishing Edward luck in his teachings, to gather strength of his spirit so he can fulfill his missions. And he makes one other comment that he says, we don't want to get misled about religion. Religion has many good qualities, and we owe much thanks to religion for preserving as much of the teaching and stories of my life as they have. Because, and even Edward agrees with this, that religions on their own are not wicked intrigues. They are not bad. There is much good in religions. It is simply the misuse of them, which is misleading to people and which is so harmful to people. Those people which take the goodness of religion, exaggerate it, and bend it around. I know for myself, and being raised in an Episcopal family, that there are a lot of very loving, beautiful people who believe in Christianity, who are very devout in their beliefs. And these are wonderful people. And the priests, for the most part, in most all of the churches, are the same. They believe full well. They are full of love. They are wonderful people trying to do something well for humanity. These people are not the problem. There are many people who exaggerate and pretend that Emmanuel was something that he's not. Hardly anyone knows the real truth about the real life of Emmanuel, and that's what the Talmud Emmanuel is going to bring to the public. But he just wanted to make it clear that he understands the differences, and he's not trying to make the statement that religion is bad. It is the misuse of it which is leading people astray. Edward has a comment about Ascot not being included in the conversation, even though she's been sitting there all this while. And Emmanuel, he seems to be very exacting, a very intelligent person who is right on top of the thoughts of Edward all the time. And he remarks it was that the conversation was for you and I, and that Ascot full well knows all of the laws of creation and is aware of all the things that we're talking about. And it was my time to speak to you, and I'm sure that Ascot takes no reproach to that. And Ascot chimes in, of course. That's exactly why I was here. So with that, they get up, and Emmanuel says, "Follow me," and they walk over to the followers they're sitting across the road, where Jitsi now's had his chance to make a few friends and calm down, and he's having a great time there himself, and he's not paying any attention to the others. So Emmanuel and his followers move on down the road and go on, and Jitsi, Ascot, and Edward then return back to Ascot's ship and return back to their own time frame. They do not stay there for the next coming of days, which of course are very important in the life of Emmanuel. Okay, this next part, we're going to go over the actual scrolls that were written by Judas Iscariot. We've heard in the previous section here that how Judas Iscariot has written down much of Emmanuel's teachings during the time of his ministry, but they've been stolen by Judah Iharieth and used against them. And the other problem was, as Emmanuel pointed out, hardly anybody reads or writes in that time period anyway. So he was well aware of being a future visionist, Emmanuel, being able to see the future, that it would be important later on, as there was evolution in society and as people became clear in their thinking and were more open to the truth, there would be an opportunity to reiterate the truth in the future and have it take a foothold in our society. And that's when we're living now. We are at that time. So, as we will read in the Talmud Emmanuel, the book that's going to be formed out of the scrolls that Judas Iscariot will write, what happens after the crucifixion is they will continue on. Emmanuel will eventually wind up in India, where he will live in Srinagar, which we're going to talk about. And Judas Iscariot will write down all of his lessons, and these will be buried in the ground. Well, in 1963, the Plejadians led a Greek Orthodox minister named Rashid to the spot where these scrolls were actually buried. Now, they were buried exactly in the original tomb of Emmanuel, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And they were underneath a rock, and they were dug up by him. What happened was, once he dug them up, they were in a kind of a glass resin sort of case. And it looks like the resin had almost been poured over them or something. And Rashid took those, and as I understand from other people, I believe that they were actually taken to the British Museum at one point